Picture this. A fisherman is out on a quiet stretch of water, minding his own business, when a wild dolphin suddenly appears next to his boat, nudging something toward him. He leans over expecting maybe a fish, maybe trash, maybe nothing at all. Instead, it's a baby dolphin, tangled in fishing line, barely breathing. The mother is right there, circling, watching, somehow understanding that this particular ape in this particular floating object might be able to help in a way she physically cannot. This isn't some isolated feel-good viral fluke either. This exact pattern, animals bringing their most vulnerable, most precious offspring directly to humans, shows up again and again across completely unrelated species on every continent, in situations that have absolutely nothing to do with each other. And once you start pulling at that thread, the explanation gets a lot more interesting than animals just like us. Let's start with the obvious question, the one you're probably already asking. Why would any wild animal, a creature whose entire evolutionary programming is built around fear, suspicion, and self-preservation, voluntarily walk up to the single most dangerous species on the planet and hand over its baby? Humans have spent the last 10,000 years hunting, displacing, and occasionally domesticating basically every animal we've come into contact with. By every reasonable evolutionary metric, animals should treat us the way you'd treat a stranger holding a chainsaw at 2 a.m. And yet, over and over, across species that share almost nothing in common biologically, we see the exact opposite. We see trust. Specifically, trust at the moment it matters most when a life is on the line. So let's actually dig into this, because the answer isn't one single tidy explanation. It's a stack of overlapping reasons, and honestly, by the end of this, you might start side-eyeing your pets a little differently. First, let's talk about the cat thing, because if you own a cat, you might have already experienced this firsthand and not even realized what was happening. Outdoor cats and feral cat colonies have a long, well-documented history of bringing kittens, sometimes injured, sometimes just newborn and helpless, directly to specific humans they've identified as reliable. Not random humans. Specific ones. The neighbor who leaves food out, the person who once helped a stray with a thorn in its paw 3 months ago, and was apparently never forgiven for it, because now there's a steady stream of kittens showing up on the porch like some kind of furry subscription service nobody signed up for. Cats are incredibly good at building what researchers sometimes call a mental map of safe versus unsafe entities in their environment. They watch, they remember, they notice which humans are calm, predictable, and food-providing, versus which humans are loud, erratic, or prone to chasing them off with a broom. Once a cat builds enough trust in a particular human, that human essentially gets reclassified, mentally, from potential threat to something closer to extension of the colony. And once you're inside that mental category, you start getting access to the same protective instincts a mother cat would extend to another trusted adult cat. The kittens get brought to you not because the cat thinks you're magic, but because you've already passed a months-long, completely unspoken background check. Now here's where it gets stranger, because this same pattern of test, evaluate, trust, then deploy the babies shows up in animals that are nowhere near as domesticated as your average backyard cat colony. Dolphins and whales have an extensive, well-documented history of approaching boats specifically when an injured calf or an entangled juvenile is involved. There's something almost eerie about how deliberate this behavior looks. These aren't panicked, random encounters. Researchers and fishermen have reported cases where a mother whale will position an injured calf directly alongside a boat, hold position, and wait, almost like she's saying, "All right, your turn. Do the thing you do." Marine biologists have pointed to cetacean intelligence and social complexity as a likely explanation here. Dolphins and whales already operate within incredibly tight-knit pods that practice cooperative care, shared babysitting duties, and coordinated rescue behavior among their own kind. If you already have the cognitive and social wiring to recognize this individual needs help, and that other individual over there has the ability to provide it, it's apparently not that big a leap to occasionally extend that recognition across species lines, especially toward a species that's been floating around in slow, loud, clearly non-threatening boats for generations. There's also a sneaky little detail that gets overlooked here. Human boats are loud, but human distress responses are remarkably consistent and remarkably gentle when an animal is visibly injured or in trouble. Slow movements, quiet voices, careful hands. Animals are extremely good at reading body language, and a species that consistently responds to vulnerability with gentleness instead of aggression eventually gets filed under a different category entirely. We're loud and we're everywhere, sure, but we're also, weirdly, one of the only species on the planet that regularly goes out of its way to help baby animals that aren't even our own. That reputation apparently travels. Let's talk about birds for a second, because bird behavior around humans gets wildly underrated in this whole conversation. There are well-documented cases of wild birds, magpies, crows, even certain raptors bringing injured or abandoned chicks towards specific humans who've previously shown some kind of caretaking behavior, feeding the local flock, rescuing a chick that fell from a nest, that sort of thing. Crows in particular are famous for this, mostly because crows have memory systems that would honestly embarrass some humans. Crows can recognize individual human faces for years, hold what looks suspiciously like a grudge against people who've wronged them, and extend something that looks a whole lot like loyalty toward people who've helped them. If a crow decides you're one of the good ones, that designation can apparently last basically forever, passed down even to the crow's own offspring, who somehow seem to know which humans are fine, before ever directly interacting with them. This raises a genuinely fascinating possibility that some of this baby-delivering behavior isn't just individual trust. It's something closer to inherited or socially transmitted trust. A young animal raised around a parent who treats a particular human as safe may simply absorb that assessment the same way a human kid absorbs which neighbors are the nice ones, without ever being explicitly told. Now, here's a big one that ties a lot of this together. Domestication didn't just change animals physically, it fundamentally rewired how certain species process trust and dependency in the first place. Dogs are the most obvious example here. And dog behavior around bringing puppies to humans is honestly one of the most touching things in the entire animal kingdom. A mother dog who trusts her owner will frequently bring newborn puppies directly to that person, sometimes literally carrying them one by one and depositing them at the human's feet like she's making a delivery. This isn't random. Domesticated dogs have spent roughly 15,000 years evolving alongside humans specifically around cooperative care, shared resources, and mutual protection. Somewhere deep in dog psychology, humans got permanently filed under pack member with thumbs, and pack members get access to the puppies. It's not a fluke. It's the entire point of how the relationship evolved in the first place. And this is where the story gets a little bit deeper, because that same wiring, the stuff that makes a dog trust a human enough to hand over puppies, seems to occasionally bleed outward into wild populations too. There have been documented cases of wild wolves, coyotes, and even foxes showing unusually low fear behavior around specific humans in areas with long histories of indirect coexistence, feeding stations, low hunting pressure, generations of non-threatening encounters. It's not domestication exactly, but it's something adjacent to it, a kind of soft, slow-building familiarity that occasionally produces behavior you'd normally only expect from a fully domesticated animal. Let's get into elephants for a second, because elephant behavior around humans might be the single most emotionally devastating example in this entire topic. And I say that with full awareness that I'm explaining all this with a slightly goofy tone. Elephants have an enormous memory, famously enormous, and they form deep, multi-generational social bonds within their herds. There are numerous documented cases of elephant herds approaching specific humans, often conservationists, rangers, or sanctuary workers with injured or orphaned calves, almost like they're requesting medical intervention. In several well-documented sanctuary situations, elephant mothers have been observed essentially presenting an injured calf to caretakers, standing back and waiting, sometimes for hours, clearly anticipating some kind of help. What makes this especially wild is that elephants appear to remember specific individual humans who've helped them or their herd members in the past, sometimes for years, sometimes for the animal's entire lifetime. There are stories of elephants recognizing former caretakers after a decade of separation, responding with behavior that looks an awful lot like genuine emotional recognition. If an elephant can hold onto a positive memory of a specific human for 10+ years, it's honestly not that surprising that the same elephant would eventually decide that human is a safe option when a calf needs help. So at this point, you might be noticing a pattern building here, and it's worth naming directly. Nearly every example we've covered involves animals with unusually strong memory, social complexity, and some history, even an indirect one, of low-threat interaction with humans. This isn't random animal behavior. It's closer to a slow-building, cross-species trust algorithm built case by case, generation by generation, memory by memory. There's also a less romantic, more practical layer to all of this, and it's worth talking about honestly instead of just leaning into the warm, fuzzy version. Sometimes bringing a baby to a human isn't really a deliberate, thoughtful gesture of trust. Sometimes it's closer to desperation. A mother animal facing a predator threat, a flooding den, an injury she physically cannot treat, may simply be drawn toward the nearest large, slow-moving, generally non-predatory shape in the area, which, awkwardly, often ends up being us. Humans are big, loud, and tend to smell like campfires, sunscreen, and questionable fast food decisions, none of which scream, "I am a threat to your baby," in the same way a genuine predator's scent would. In a moment of crisis, an animal's options narrow fast, and sometimes the trust the human option isn't really trust at all. It's the absence of a worse alternative. But here's the thing, even desperation-based trust still requires the animal's brain to make a calculated risk assessment that we, historically, don't deserve. The fact that approach the human consistently beats out do literally anything else in moments of crisis still says something genuinely remarkable about how animals have recalibrated their threat models around us over time. We've apparently, despite our extremely mixed track record, ended up coded as a viable emergency option across an enormous range of unrelated species. That's not nothing. There's also a fascinating angle involving scent and chemical signaling that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Humans produce a very specific, very recognizable chemical signature, somewhere between the smell of soap, sweat, food residue, and whatever laundry detergent happens to be popular that decade. Animals with strong scent-based memory, and that's most mammals, can apparently catalog specific human scent profiles the same way they'd catalog the scent of a known, safe member of their own group. Once a human's specific scent gets filed under safe, predictable, non-threatening, it can apparently stick around in an animal's memory for an absurdly long time, which helps explain why some of these baby-delivering moments happen with animals that have only had a handful of prior interactions with the human in question. Now let's talk about something that ties this whole topic together in a way most people never consider. Humans are weirdly, almost suspiciously good at recognizing and responding to distress signals from completely unrelated species. There's actual research suggesting that the specific pitch, urgency, and rhythm of distress calls across many mammal species share enough structural similarity that humans instinctively respond to them, even when we've never heard that particular animal's call before. A crying human baby and a distressed puppy trigger remarkably similar instinctive responses in adult humans: faster heart rate, immediate attention, an urge to investigate and help. Some researchers think this instinctive sensitivity to vulnerability might not be limited to recognizing our own species' babies. It might be a broader, somewhat leaky caretaking instinct that occasionally triggers for other species' young as well. If animals have, over generations, picked up on the fact that humans consistently respond to distress signals with help rather than aggression, that reputation becomes an evolutionary asset worth exploiting even across species lines. And honestly, this might be the most important piece of the entire puzzle. We're one of remarkably few species on the planet that regularly, voluntarily, and repeatedly intervenes to help offspring that aren't our own and aren't even our own species. Most predators in nature view another species' vulnerable young as, well, lunch. Humans, despite an admittedly rocky overall relationship with the natural world, have built up a surprisingly consistent reputation across multiple unrelated animal groups as the one species that tends to choose help over harm when a baby animal is in distress. That reputation, built slowly, inconsistently, imperfectly across thousands of individual interactions, seems to be exactly what's driving so much of this behavior. Let's talk about primates for a moment, because this is where things get almost uncomfortably close to home. There are documented cases of wild and semi-wild primates, chimpanzees, bonobos, even certain monkey species in areas with long-term research stations bringing injured or orphaned infants directly toward familiar human researchers. This isn't entirely surprising once you consider how closely primate social cognition mirrors our own. Primates already practice something researchers call alloparenting, where infants are cared for not just by their biological mother, but by a wider network of trusted group members, aunts, older siblings, sometimes even unrelated adults who've proven themselves reliable. Extending that same alloparenting logic toward a long-term, consistently non-threatening human observer isn't actually that